The Sheep and Wool Centre recalls the history and traditions of the sheep and wool industry. This is of local significance as there was once a thriving wool industry in Leenane, and sheep farming in the Connemara Hills continues to this day. The wool crafts of carding, spinning and weaving are demonstrated and explained in the museum. The Sheep and Wool Centre is situated in the picturesque village of Leenane at the head of Killary Harbour. The roads from Galway, Clifton and Westport meet at this point. The village was originally called Leenane, meaning little tide filling place at the head of the sea. The breathtaking scenery of the wild and rugged countryside surrounding Killary Harbour equals or surpasses the best that Ireland can offer. Killary Harbour is the only true fjord in Ireland. During the last ice age, an ice mass flowed southwestwards through the Irf Valley, gouged out Killary Harbour and then retreated. The beautiful Ashley Falls sits at the mouth of the Irf River. The scenic beauty of the landscape has attracted tourists to this area for many years since the early 1800s to fish, paint and hill walk. Climbers have a choice of well-established walkways or more challenging climbs in the surrounding mountain ranges, with panoramic views of the surrounding countryside. Leenane is renowned for its fishing, with the Irf and Delphi fisheries nearby. Farming, aquaculture and tourism are the mainstay of the local economy. There is evidence everywhere of greater population density in the past. There are numerous ruins of old houses, and the potato or lazy beds still to be seen on the mountain slopes belong to the pre-famine period. Sheep have been farmed in Ireland for over 8,000 years. The Soay and Jacob are existing examples of these primitive sheep. Over time, larger breeds of white wool sheep were bred, and many primitive breeds disappeared. The Clador, or Clada, a breed of sheep native to Connemara, was crossed with the imported Scottish blackface, producing the West of Ireland blackface. This led to the extinction of the Clador. Today, the West of Ireland blackface is the main breed of sheep found locally. It is a tough sheep, well adapted to the wet, mountainous Connemara landscape. Its wool is coarse and can be used for carpets, but commercially the meat is more important. Connemara lamb is a premium product as the mixed mountain vegetation gives the meat a distinctive flavour. The sheepdog plays a very important role on the farm. Good dogs love herding or indeed just watching sheep. A dog can do the work of two people when gathering sheep, especially on mountains. Historically, wool fibre for clothes was very important. There was a thriving wool industry locally in Leenane, producing fine hand-woven tweed. The Congested District Board provided education and employment in impoverished areas by developing indigenous craft skills. In the 1890s, a weaving industry was developed locally, and the project was supported by the owner of the Leenane Hotel, Robert McKeown. Brothers Tom and John Kerrigan were the local weavers in Leenane. They were trained in modern techniques by a visiting instructor. They then trained the other weavers. At the Sheep and Wool Centre, visitors can discover the various stages of the wool handcrafts industry as it was practiced in the past. First, the sheep were shorn. Here, Patrick Kerrigan shears a ram using the hand shears. The hand shears were invented in the Iron Age, and although modified over time, are still in use. However, most of the sheep are now shorn with electric shears. Sheep were shorn between May and July, and it was traditional to wash the sheep before hand shearing. After shearing, the fleece was folded by turning in the edges, then rolled and tied with a band of the neck wool. The fleece was first teased by hand and then carded. Teasing pulled the fibres apart, allowing any dirt to fall away. The unwashed wool contains lanolin, a coat of grease on the fibre. Wool spins better in its own lanolin, and the spun yarn can be used to make waterproof clothing. Carding separates and lines the wool fibres. Carding was a tedious job, mainly done by children. When all the wool fibres were disentangled, they are rolled into a fluffy roll or rowlag, ready for spinning. The spinning of wool to form yarn has been practiced for millennia. The drop spindle is one of the earliest devices used for spinning. It is simply made from a notched stick and a weight known as a whorl. The spindle is still used around the world as it has the advantage of being easily made and transported. There are records of spindles being used by women walking from South Connemara to the markets in the 1950s. The spindle was mechanised by placing it horizontally between two supports and attaching it to a large wheel with a belt. The big wheel was used in the west of Ireland. The operator stands turning the wheel with one hand while drawing out the rolls of wool with the other. The wool is spun and then wound onto a bobbin separately. The traditional technique of spinning on the great wheel is a rare skill. Today, there are only a couple of people in Connemara who can use the great wheel with proficiency. The curry wheel was similar to the big wheel, with shorter legs enabling the operator to sit. The Donegal wheel was adapted from a flax wheel of Dutch origin. This is a treadle wheel, where the wheel is set in motion by the foot, leaving both hands free to work with the wool. It also had a bobbin and flyer, which combined the spinning and winding in one operation. This wheel was more compact, easier to transport and easier to use. The wool fibre was dyed before or after spinning. Before modern synthetic dyes were discovered, plant dyes were used. This selection of dyed wool shows the different colours obtained from natural plant dyes. The best known of these was lichen, or crottle. It dyed the wool a rich red-brown colour. It was traditionally believed that socks dyed with crottle were warmer. Another local plant, whin or gorse, gave a bright yellow colour. After spinning and dyeing, the yarn was knitted or woven. Hand knitting has been practiced for centuries. The richness and skill of the craft was not always appreciated by the knitter, who took it for granted. A variety of stitches were used, each with their own meaning. Knitting needs very little equipment, and similar to the hand spindle can be carried anywhere. Traditional implements used in knitting before steel needles were goose quills, hazel or willow twigs. Weaving on the hand loom was a specialist trade. A woven cloth consists of a warp and weft. The warp threads are held under tension along the length of the loom. When weaving, the warp threads are separated to allow the weft thread to pass between the fabric. The white threads on this loom are the warp, and the orange threads the weft. Preparing the warp is the most complicated part of weaving. The weaving process became quicker with the invention of the fly shuttle in 1733. And a loom with a fly shuttle was first introduced to Ireland in the 1800s. These old samples of tweed were woven in Leenane in the early 1900s. Home woven cloth was produced for local use and for export. Fine tweed made in Leenane was exhibited in the Glasgow International Exhibition in 1898. Today, the processing of wool is carried out by machine and is largely computerised. Hand processing of wool has become a specialist craft or hobby. The Sheep and Wool Centre is run by the O'Toole family and has been open as a visitor attraction since 1992. There is a cafe and shop on site for visitors to use. We hope you enjoy your visit to the Sheep and Wool Centre.